Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration. Time for DC Spotlight for the week of October 23rd, 2024. God, I can't believe October's already half over. Just got back from New York Comic Con. It was an absolute blast. I haven't put out any content yet from New York Comic Con. I'm so far behind, trying to dig out from the day job and get some sleep and all that. But there will be content coming. I'll have a wrap up. I'm still working on my wrap up for LA Comic Con. That's coming as well. Um, but New York Comic Con was a blast. Saw so many creators there. I barely was on the floor. I know there were more creators actually on the show floor that I didn't get enough time to see. But yeah, it was a ton of fun. I never got back to my room earlier than 4 a.m. One night I didn't get back till 5:15. I guess you'd say one morning I didn't get back till 5:15. Sleep for a couple hours, get up, do it all over again. It was amazing. Marvel Party was awesome. The Black Market Narrative, Radiant Black Party was awesome. Yeah, it was just a ton of fun. So look for that recap. And there was also quite a bit of news that came out of New York Comic Con from DC. I did live tweet their panels, and I'm going to go through that stuff right now, just super quickly. You can look it up for yourself over at the DC website. Um, and the reason I'm going to go through it really quickly is because this is far and away the biggest week we've had in the All In era. There's 14 or 15 books this week. We're just going to each do our top five, but we will mention all of the books that are coming out this week. But we're going to go, a little more in depth with the top five that Rocky and I have. Also, I'll mention it was so cool, to talk to creators. Most, far and away, the most creators I had a chance to meet previously, but there were a number of creators who I had not met before. And what was really great is I'd go up to introduce myself, and they were like, "Oh yeah, I watched the show," or "Oh yeah," and we started talking about the podcast, the YouTube channel, whatever. And it's just great to hear that people are tuning in, not just fans, but also creators, to kind of keep up to date with what's going on at DC. That's awesome. So I'm going to start with the news from the Absolute panel that was there. DC officially announced an Absolute Martian Manhunter series by one of the hottest writers in comics right now, Dennis Camp. The art is by Javier Rodriguez, who's been absolutely killing it lately on the Zatanna Black Label that we're going to be talking about today. Dennis Camp did 20th Century Men over Image, which is amazing. I got a chance to talk to him about that. But he's got a Martian Manhunter series that's coming that's not actually about a Martian. And he kind of explained why. It's the character's called Martian Manhunter, but just an absolutely really cool character design. And the fact that Javier Rodriguez, when he initially did this character design, he did the character design out of Play-Doh. It's the first time there's ever been kind of a model used as the first iteration of a character. So it's really cool and weird, and I'm really looking forward to it. I think Dennis Camp is a brilliant writer, and this is going to be a weird series, and I can't wait for it. Also, we finally know what Jeremy Adams is doing. I mean, I've known for a little bit, but he's doing a Fractal Lanterns one-shot, which is going to spin out of the Civil Core thing that's going on. Ken Marion is going to do the art for that, and he's also bringing Aquaman back to the DCU. He has a lot of plans for that, so he'll probably be on soon to talk about all this stuff. Really looking forward to that. Another friend of the show, Ryan Parrott, who's going to be on to talk about his Vicarious series pretty soon, along with the artist Eleonora Carlini. But he's doing a project at DC where he's co-writing the Atom Project with John Ridley, which is just really cool. I got a chance to talk to him at the Black Narrative Party, asking him, how it all came together, and the fact that it's called the Atom Project. So you have Ryan Choi Atom, you have Ray Palmer Atom, but you also have Captain Atom, who you wouldn't necessarily put with the other two. But really cool idea for the story that's coming up. I'm really excited for that. We also have the Superman Lex Luthor special, which is written by Josh Williamson, which really explores this idea of Luthor having lost his memory. But what if Luthor's the one guy who can solve this mystery that's been plaguing Superman, but only if Luthor gets his memory back? But, and we saw it in this week's books where his daughter Lena has been showing him, trying to jog his memory, and he's like, this is not helping. I'm not remembering, but I don't know if I want to. I seem like such a horrible guy. How awful if Luther finally has really turned the page and he's not being a jackass, to have to go back to and become that like horrible person again in order to like save the world. So that's coming up as well. So that's over on the mainline side. As far as the absolute side, news just came out. There's going to be a third printing. The Absolute Batman #1 sold out. The Absolute Batman #2, the second printing of #1 sold out. Now they're on to a third printing. It was absolutely crazy. And the coolest thing about Absolute Batman that they showed, hope you guys got a chance to see it. If not, go over to the Comic Source Twitter feed, go back and find that image. I took a picture, I posted it on there. We got to see the Absolute Batmobile for the first time. It's an earth mover. And if you don't know what an earth mover is, just Google it. It's one of those like 3-story tall, gigantic dump trucks where if you stand next to the tire, you don't even like come up to the middle of the wheel, hubcap, whatever. Like the tires themselves are like 15 feet tall. Like it's amazing. It looks so awesome. When they put it on the screen, the whole room was just like, holy shit. It's absolutely crazy. I mean, go big, right? Go big or go home. So that was awesome. We didn't get too much revealed about Absolute Wonder Woman, mostly because, at the time it hadn't come out yet. Same thing with Absolute Superman, other than Jason Aaron kind of stressing the things that he's been stressing all along, how he really wanted to make it different. And he's really excited for it to, see the light of day. We have a few more weeks before it comes out. But that being said, I've had a chance to read it. Rocky's had a chance to read it. I got to be honest, as awesome as the books are this week, I want to talk to you guys about Absolute Superman. Oh my God. I am
It's amazing.
so excited. I'm so excited for Absolute Superman. Yeah. Oh my God. It's so good. So anyway, we'll be talking about it soon enough. We also had Jeff Lemire talking about JSA and Absolute Flash. And, basically Lemire reiterating what's different about Absolute Flash. It's a teenage Wally West. There's no Flashes that have come before. And it's really going to be something special. As far as JSA, he didn't really actually reveal much more than what he did when he was on the show. So if you want to know kind of about why JSA is a bucket list thing for him and what he's planning on doing, just go listen to my interview with him from a few weeks ago. Ram V also, again, talking about his Jack Kirby Fourth World series, the New Gods that's coming up. And if anything, as the All-In era marches on and more of this Absolute stuff marches on, it's beginning to become clear just how important that New God series is going to be. So they revealed some covers. They revealed some new artwork. Again, you can go check the Comic Source Twitter feed and get a chance to look at all that. And then Al Yun was there. The Green Lantern reveals were crazy. So the Green Lantern's not a person. It's like a giant like lantern, like the lantern symbol that's like just shows up and like crushes this town. Again, there's lots of pictures from the panel in the Comic Source feed. But what that means, and it sounds like multiple people are going to be sharing the Green Lantern power. Like, yeah, there's a lot to. There's again, it's like such a mystery. What's going on with that? And then obviously he has the Metamorpho series coming as well, which he talked about how Metamorpho is such a quirky and important character to him. And more to come with that. Tom King and Daniel Sampere were there talking about Trinity and Wonder Woman as well. But again, not really anything new. We did have some new art from Justice League Unlimited from Dan Mora. Again, you can go check the feed and see that. And then Joshua Williamson showing off some art from Superman, along with Lois as Superwoman, and this idea of, and again, this is a book we're going to cover today, so you're going to get more of this, the many deaths of Doomsday and Superman at the end of time with Time Trapper, where it's only the Time Trapper and Superman that have survived. Superman's literally on fire. Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff coming there, and I'm not going to say any more about that because, like I said, we're going to be talking about the absolute or the Superman story arc when we talk about the books this week, so you'll get more info there. And then the last thing, Clayton Henry's there to talk about his collaboration with Mark Waid on Action Comics. Broke down the design of that 3 heads melded into one monstrosity that Superman battled a couple weeks ago, and got a chance to hang out with Clayton quite a bit actually on Saturday night, and he's awesome. But yeah, he just took us through the character design, and he's I think he said he's on the 8th issue, so he's got like 4 more to go. But yeah, really great stuff, instantly classic, and a lot more to be revealed about Mon-El, is what I can say. That's kind of the information I got from Clayton. And then as far as the Jim Lee and Friends panel, a couple big things from that on Sunday. We have Tim Seeley along with Mitch Gerrits doing a Peacemaker series, or not Peacemaker, sorry, Vigilante series, but it's Vigilante and Eagly. So it's a double feature. Each issue will have, a story starring Eagly and a story starring Vigilante, and it very much ties in with the James Gunn TV series. So look for that. Both those guys have been working on it for a while, and they're really, really excited about it. Also officially announced, Jim Lee and Jeff Loeb are coming to Batman, the regular Batman series. It's Hush 2, and it's not just Jim Lee and Jeff Loeb. The whole team's getting back together. You've got Richard Starkins doing the lettering. You've got Alex Sinclair on colors. You've got Scott Williams doing the inks. And it's going to be in 2 6-part stories in the regular Batman series. So starting with issue 158, that'll be part 1, and it'll run for 6 issues. Then somebody else will come on and do something, and then later on they'll come back. And that's basically just give Jim Lee a chance to draw it. My understanding is he has 2 issues in the can already. A lot of people are like, oh, no, there's no way Jim Lee can draw 6 monthly issues in a row and for it to come out on time. Well, that's the whole point, right? That's why it's not until 158, which is March of next year, is when the first issue comes out. And by the time the last issue comes out, it will be 10 months total. So that basically gives Jim Lee from now 10 months to draw 4 issues. So I would hope, I mean, that's more than 2 months an issue. I would hope he'd be able to get it done in time. My understanding is also that it's kind of his what he's considering his last go round as a regular penciler on a monthly book. So I'm pretty confident that he's going to get it done in time. But they showed some artwork from it. It looks absolutely amazing. Really, really cool. Also, they announced Justice League versus Godzilla versus Kong, which we love, from Brian Buccellato and artist Christian Duce, is coming back for a part 2. This time it's going to take place on what they were calling the Monster Earth of the legendary monsters. So look for that to come. DC Vertigo is back, which, again, not really a surprise. I'm actually sort of surprised it took this long. But specifically with DC Vertigo, DC is retroactively applying the DC Vertigo label to the Nice House by the Lake and Nice House by the Sea, and there will be new printings of those issues that have already come out for those 2 series that have the DC Vertigo labels and trade dress on them. And then I talked to a few other creators and found out that DC had approached them earlier this year to have them pitch ideas for Vertigo, but there probably won't be any new original Vertigo titles coming out until next year, but they are going to be coming. And based on the people that I talked to, it's sort of the types of people that you would expect. So I don't want to name any names, get anybody in trouble. But yeah, DC Vertigo's back. And I think it's great because it's a way for DC to stay relevant in the creator-owned sphere. And really, with that DC Vertigo label, really kind of brand certain stories and certain titles and series with a brand that's familiar, that you kind of know what to expect. It's going to be weird. It's going to be off kilter. It's going to be magic or horror or that kind of thing. So anyway, those are the announcements. Again, you can go check out the Comic Source Twitter feed and look at those threads for a bunch of artwork and what have you from all those announcements. So that being said, let's dive into the books for this week, starting with Detective Comics number 1090. Tom Taylor is the writer. Mikhail Yanin on art and colors. Wes Abbott handles the letters. And I just realized I'm going to pause right there. Actually, I did want to ask you, Rocky, were you following along when these announcements were coming out? Anything that had you super excited? Did you see the Batmobile?
I did, and it's okay. I don't, the Batmobile wasn't too much of a big deal to me. I don't. It looks like a dump truck. Okay, I that was the least of my I love Absolute Batman. I just think of all the things of Absolute Batman, that was the thing I'm least interested in. But it's still cool. I love all the stuff that Snyder's doing on Absolute Batman. I love it. I was more excited. You were nice enough to call me and give me the news of. You called me from New York and you gave me the news of Jeremy Adams on Aquaman, and I quite enjoyed hearing that. And that and the Vertigo news is the stuff that I'm most excited about. It's great to have Vertigo back. That was a huge mistake when they got rid of that. They're finally reapplying the lipstick on the pig, and of that ridiculous decision of getting rid of Vertigo. It's good to have that back. And Aquaman coming back with full glory and being the king of Atlantis and hopefully getting rid of the absurd notion that Atlantis is a democracy, which is nonsense. That's about as foolish as making Themyscira a democracy, but that's another topic. But no, I like it. All the news. I mean, you said it. I won't restate it all. But DC's. I don't necessarily love all the news, but it's great to have news. It's great that they're being creative. Of course, I'm not supposed to be excited about all the ideas. They're trying to cater to different interests, and they are. And they got different artists. They got different ideas, and it's just a great time to be a DC reader, man. It's just great.
Yeah, I would almost venture to say that the absolute Martian Manhunter news was like the thing that right after the panel people were talking about the most and most excited about, which was interesting to me. I got a little bit
Yeah.
of a Human Target vibe from it.
Sure. Yeah,
But
it's different. It's so different. Martian Manhunter's always been. It's a mixed bag. He's always so different. He's had so many different iterations, and this one's so out there.
it
But
is
the one
way out
thing
there.
you mentioned it's so out there. But if anybody can pull it off, it's Dennis Camp, because he's coming in right now. He seems to be at the height. He just seems to be firing on all cylinders. His ideas just seem to hit with fans, and so he's the perfect creator to have on such a different kind of approach.
Yeah, and so I'll give just a little tiny bit more information. So basically, this guy who's just like a regular family man FBI agent is invaded by a psychic alien. So he's not a Martian. So you're like, well, why is he called Martian Manhunter? So the alien kind of invades this guy's head, and he kind of searches his brain for like a term that this guy would understand, to talk about how alien, and I mean alien in terms of different and strange and weird that he is as an entity. And the word that the guy's brain uses is Martian. So that's why it's called Martian Man. He's not actually from Mars. It doesn't have anything to do with Mars. He's not even from our like level of existence or plane of existence or what have you. He's completely like an alien psychic entity. So, and the design is out there. So, anyway, let's get back to it. Detective Comics 1090, as I said, this. So when I talked to Tom Taylor at San Diego Comic Con, he was telling me about this story, Mercy of the Father Part 1, and how he was going back to the earliest days of Batman, even pre-Batman, even pre Bruce Wayne, as Batman, basically, and diving into the origins of Bruce Wayne, the death of his parents, and what have you. And I was interested because I think Tom Taylor's a very talented writer, but I'm like, well, so how's he going to pull this? Is he going to be able to pull this off in such a way that I'm going to buy into this? Because as we all know, I'm not big on the retcons and going back and adding things to people's origins where it's like, well, if that was the case, then it would have shown up before now. Well, it hasn't shown up before now because no writer thought of the idea until now. And so you think of a really cool idea, but it has to tie in with the earliest days, and you go back and you're effectively changing things. And in a way, for me, it slightly invalidates stories that other creators have written previously because it could contradict, or it would be like, it's like with the Court of Owls. It's a super cool concept, but in my mind, it's like, okay, so this Court of Owls, predates Batman and predates Bruce Wayne, and Bruce Wayne is the world's greatest detective, and yet the Court of Owls, existed for how many years before he discovered them? That weakens Bruce Wayne as a character. It weakens Batman as a character that all this stuff was happening. Same thing with the Invisible Mafia in Metropolis that Brian Michael Bendis introduced. It's like you create this underground organized crime family called the Invisible Mafia, and it was happening under Superman's eyes, for years and years. That makes Superman seem like an idiot. I don't buy it. I don't like it. So all that being said, was this going to work? I think that it does. And I got a little bit of a holy shit moment, but the jury's still out to determine if ultimately it's going to land or not. So So basically, in this story, as Tom Taylor had told us, there's somebody that's out there and they're killing very young criminals in Gotham City. And it's been multiple. There's been like 11 very young, like 19-ish age criminals that have been killed. And this issue starts off with Batman pursuing one of those types of criminals, and the guy gets away or gets far enough ahead of Batman that he's murdered, and Batman's unable to save him. So there's that mystery going on. Then we have a little bit of an interlude where Bruce Wayne goes to a party, and he meets this girl that we meet early in the book in a flashback that was actually um, sort of saved in a way by Bruce Wayne's parents. So her mother was beaten by her boyfriend constantly, and they were in this car accident when the woman was very, very pregnant, and the man would have died, except Thomas Wayne was able to save him. And so when the woman finds out that Thomas Wayne has saved her boyfriend, she says, "You gotta take my daughter and send her away and tell this guy that she was killed in the accident. As a result of the accident, the baby died before it could be born." Thomas doesn't want to do that. He gets Martha Wayne involved. Martha um, hides the woman and the baby, sends them off, different name, sets them up with a new life or whatever, and they're able to survive. And this woman eventually grows up. This little baby girl eventually grows up to become this brilliant geneticist, and she has created a way to sort of turn back the clock. Now, Batman has always resisted. So, and she knows Bruce Wayne. She has love for Bruce Wayne because his parents. She knows about how his parents, saved her life. So she has love for Bruce Wayne, and she's offering Bruce Wayne this sort of fountain of youth in a way, Sangral, which is the name for the Holy Grail. Now, he's always resisted any kind of magic or artificial um, ways to sort of prolong his life or help with the healing or whatever. But this is, a purely scientific way. So, that's where his predilections are. That's where his leanings are. So he's maybe more willing to accept it because he's thinking back to how he couldn't save that criminal earlier. Because, the line he thinks to himself, "I've had more knee surgeries than this guy's had knees," and he's just thinking about how much more he could do if he were younger, if his body was in better shape and that sort of thing. And if he lives longer, he's going to be able to be a force for good for that much longer. So you can tell he's considering it. So then we go back to the flashback. The woman's gone. The baby girl's gone. They tell the guy as he wakes up from his surgery that they both died as a result of the accident. He's freaking out or what have you, wants to leave the hospital. Thomas Wayne is like, "Well, we've done what we can for him. If we have to, we'll let him leave. So yeah, go ahead and let him do what he wants to." And we find out the guy's name is Joe Chill. So basically, Thomas Wayne saved the guy that is eventually going to kill him and his wife. And there's a theme running throughout the book of if you can save a life, you do. It's not your job to judge whether that life is worth saving or not. You save the life no matter what. So a very powerful story, very interesting. It certainly was a holy shit moment. We got to the end, and he says, "Joe Chill. If he wants to be discharged, let him go." And you're just like, "Whoa, what?" It's pretty meta. It's pretty meta. So, certainly this has never been hinted at before, but I wouldn't go so far as to say that it absolutely contradicts things that have happened before. Could certainly be the case, and just the story has never been told. But yeah, pretty interesting idea. I imagine Tom Taylor, with his relationship with DC and how successful he's been over there as a writer for a long time, that he probably got this pitch approved pretty quickly. So we'll see how it plays out. I can't think of somebody better to be drawing it than Mikhail Yanin. The art is absolutely superb. It just looks so good.
Yeah.
The fact that he's coloring himself as well is super creepy. Whether it's in the flashbacks or when he's drawing Batman, older, you do get a sense that he's very solid, but he does feel a little, I don't know what the word is, kind of staid in a way, kind of old fashioned, kind of, lived in. He doesn't seem, quick and nimble. He seems big and strong and powerful, which is great, but it does lean into that idea of, him having lost a step, I guess is the best way to put it. So, um, yeah, this was fantastic. It was so good. And I can't wait to see it continue to play out, and we'll see how that
Yeah.
goes. But yeah, just
Yeah.
fantastic art, fantastic story, great
I,
start.
I love the title too. The title of the arc is "A Mercy of the Father," and I think that's very appropriate given the storyline and the plot, and it's very well done. There's an elegance to it, and you just know that there's going to be emotional high points and emotional irony that's going to play out with the mercy that with the compassion that Thomas Wayne showed, saving the life of the person who would ultimately take his life, and how that will play out, and how Joe Chill's. Uh, Own ex-wife, Joel Chill's own daughter, might end up being a person that ends up helping Batman. So you never know how history works out, and how what Tom Taylor has planned here. But I'm really curious to see where this goes, because this is one where I'm a little envious of you getting to talk more about it. But I agree, it was a very, very good issue. Very good.
Yeah, and one last thing I should mention is whoever this serial killer is, it has a tie back to Thomas Wayne and that decision to save Joe Chill and with the daughter, whatever. Because we do get a couple pages right at the beginning where I'm assuming it's the serial killer is talking to Bruce, and he's saying, "Don't make the same mistake your father made. I'm killing these villains or these criminals because they deserve it," that sort of thing. So it's all going to tie together. And I'm glad you used that word elegant, because that's a great way to describe it. And just one last thought is, um, in terms of the way this looks, like the tone of the story and the tone of the artwork, it really couldn't be much different than what we got with Rom V's run. Like, it is on like the
Yeah,
complete other end of the spectrum.
exactly.
And so like anybody that didn't like that, or wanted something different, different direction, this is like you're really going to like this. It's like a total palate cleanser. Good. It takes the book in a completely different direction. So,
Definitely. Yes.
okay. Up next, Absolute Wonder Woman #1, written by Kelly Thompson. The art is by Hayden Sherman. Colors by Jordi Belair. Letters by Becca Carey. Which, by the way, I got a chance to meet Becca Carey at San Diego Comic-Con. We got to hang out, have some drinks together. She's awesome. She's Irish. She's got the thick accent. She's got the ability to drink. She was amazing. Shout out, Becca, if you're listening. Shout out. It was so amazing to meet you and hang out with
Did
you.
you drink? Did you drink with her?
Yeah, I mean, we had drinks. We were at a party where we didn't. I didn't necessarily do shots with her like I did with plenty of other people, but we won't talk about that. My bar bill was, yeah, it was insane. But anyway, Absolute Wonder Woman. A lot of people have been waiting for it. I would say that it's probably the book that we've sort of heard the least about in terms of the initial 3 Absolute titles. Kelly Thompson hasn't really done much press. Hayden's been covering it, but even when he was on that panel, he goes, "I don't want to say too much. Kelly mad at me, what have you." Um, and in a way, I really don't have that much to add either. Well, I mean, certainly if you're watching this on YouTube, that Dan Panosian cover is awesome.
Amazing.
And I would definitely pick that of all the covers, except it's a 1 in
Mhm.
25, and I don't want to spend 25 upwards of
Yeah.
$25 on it. But it is awesome. Um, but I sort of feel like of the 3, we mentioned we had a chance to read Absolute Superman. Obviously, we've read Absolute Batman. Of the 3, I feel like we get the least amount of story in this one. We do find out that Wonder Woman is raised in hell. We sort of knew that already, but she's raised by Circe, who in the main universe is, kind of one of her mortal enemies. So that dynamic is very interesting to me. But we don't really, in this particular issue, we don't dive deep into that relationship. We see that relationship, we see it develop, we see Wonder Woman in a way sort of affect Circe, and Circe, we get the impression that almost in spite of herself, that Circe falls in love with Wonder Woman and raises her as a daughter. So that dynamic is really interesting to me to be explored as this plays out, because it's going to be so much different than the dynamic between um, Diana and Hippolyta. So we'll see how that plays out. Also, in a way, this is almost an natural extension of the Wonder Woman from the main line and her back and forth relationship with the gods. I mean, the way Wonder Woman gets to hell. So apparently Zeus kills all the Amazons, and it's not quite clear to me why he didn't also kill Diana. but instead takes Diana to hell and gives her to Cersei to raise. Apollo does, Zeus's son, and also says the word Amazon is banned. It's forbidden. No one can speak it. And Cersei, if she tries to say it, it just comes out as like gibberish, whatever. So Wonder Woman is the last of the Amazons, and she is able to say the word. And will that word have power? I think eventually that will be the case. But she's always had this sense that she's something more, and she doesn't necessarily belong in hell and what have you. And I think that will be explored as well. But none of this really feels like groundbreaking or super different or ratcheted up the excitement to 11 like we got in Absolute Batman or perhaps we'll get in Superman. So that was a little interesting to me. I don't want to say that I expected more, but I think I thought this would play out a little bit differently. And I think it goes back to the fact that I feel like we got less story in this first issue than we got in Absolute Batman, or we will get in Absolute Superman. So I think there's plenty to still be developed. I will say that visually, the book is amazing. The giant sword, her helmet, her armor, the monsters that she fights, all of it is fantastic, very dynamic, tons of action. But again, and it might be I'm feeling like we're getting less story because the panels tended to be bigger in this issue, which I'm okay with because again, the artwork from Hayden Sherman is really impactful and you really get a sense of scale and of just how much danger Wonder Woman is in because of how large these monsters are that are fighting her. But we learn next to nothing about Gateway City, this place where the monsters are sort of coming to Earth from hell and looking to attack and destroy and get a foothold into our world. We get nothing. Supporting characters, nothing. We got Wonder Woman. We got Wonder Woman fighting monsters with gorgeous art. So I'm here for it. I think that Wonder Woman, the Absolute Wonder Woman series, may just be a little bit of a slower burn than the other two, and it could be that the other two slow down and this one speeds up. Just we'll have to wait and see how it plays out. So I still enjoyed this. But I did not enjoy it as much as Absolute Batman, and certainly not as much as Absolute Superman. But I did think the art was fantastic, and for that matter, the lettering from Becca is awesome. And she was kind of talking to me a little bit about some of the things that she got to do, and you can see them. I mean, you see it right there, how she's playing with fonts and sizes of things and what have you, textures, bringing that to the story. So yeah, a really unique feel. But Wonder Woman didn't feel as different from the Wonder Woman in the main line as Batman felt different, and Superman certainly feels very different. But Wonder Woman's kind of close. It almost feels like this could be, again, there's only one issue in, so this may change. But for the first issue, it sort of feels like this could be the main line Wonder Woman. And the only difference was she was raised in hell as opposed to not, which, again, that's not really that big of a difference. I mean, I suppose you start, ticking off all the things. Oh, well, that means she never met Steve Trevor, and that means she didn't have the training and didn't have a pet kangaroo or whatever. But I mean, how much of that really informs who she is? It's a little bit tangential. So yeah, like I said, I still enjoyed this, but the jury's out. That my excitement level isn't as high for this one as it is for the other two. Anything to add, Rocky?
I feel compelled to add because I'm a little bit more harsh on it. First of all, artistically it does have a different feel, and it does have that. It has a little bit of a Daniel Warren Johnson feel, a little bit, but not as good as Daniel Warren Johnson, quite frankly. But a little bit closer to a Wonder Woman Dead Earth sort of feel, which I kind of like. So I like Hayden Sherman's, I guess, darker approach here. It's good art. I'm not going to say it's great. It's good. She's Diana of Themyscira still, daughter, last of the Amazons, daughter of Circe, princess of hell, witch of the Wild Isle. So she's got all these wonderful claims to fame. She's like a wrestler with different names, but she's very much an empty vessel. And my disappointment in this first issue is just how. And we were talking earlier, you said it, well, it's only the first issue. Well, Absolute Batman had a first issue, so did Absolute Superman. We've read those, and there's a lot more substance there. There's no mention here. We got no Easter eggs here of of hints of who the rogues gallery, the villains could be, et cetera, et cetera. Wonder Woman herself is virtually a carbon copy of what she is in the mainstream DC universe. She's practically born perfect. She's filled with love and compassion. Even the animals of hell can't seem to get angry at her. There's no difference in the character work, and that's what I'm really, I can't emphasize how disappointed I am in this opening issue. I hope it changes. I hope she gets a little bit more exciting than this. I wanted more than just, oh, she's got a big sword and she rubs blood on her eyes because she's a witch now. She changes her mother. Cersei is her mother, is her de facto mother. Cersei is changed by the love of Diana, but Cersei, who we know to be a supervillain in the mainstream DC universe, doesn't seem to have any negative impact on Diana. How is Diana different? This is supposed to be a universe with dark side energy, and you wouldn't know it from Diana's character. That for me, I'm sorry, is a huge disappointment. If Wonder Woman is the same and she's already at perfection, she's already filled with love and compassion, and she's there already, then that's part of the hero's journey that I wanted to experience. I know we're going to get it with Batman, and I know we're going to get it with Superman. I know that because we read the first issues. Even here, the Amazons are basically banished by Zeus. They're lost. So she never got training from the Amazons. How is Wonder Woman? I assume she got training in hell. We're not showing any of that. We will in subsequent issues. But I say again, we got a lot more bang for our buck in the opening issues of the other absolute titles. But I will say this in defense of Kelly Thompson, that she had the toughest job here. I think would be easier to do a Superman than a Batman absolute title. She had the toughest job here, and all things considered, I'm going to cut her a lot of slack and give her that first 6 issues to see what she does with it. I'm really hoping we see more than just fighting a bunch of bland monsters with a floating triangle in the sky. And why couldn't it be a Giganta, a base demon? Why couldn't it be instead of winged demons? Why couldn't it be a bunch of silver banshees flying? I mean, you have all this access to Wonder Woman's rogues gallery, and not more of it is part of this first issue. And that's a really big concern to me, because of all the time you had to plan this, and so much of Wonder Woman lore is not in this first issue. It's a little bit of a red flag, but we'll see moving forward at where it goes.
Yeah, I just say have patience, everybody. We'll get there, but if it doesn't land, I'll be the first to say, hey, it's not working for me. So, all right. Up next, we have Green Lantern Dark. This is an Elseworlds book. It's written by Tate Bromball. Art is by Werther Del Edra. Giovanni Nero on colors. Tom Napolitano on letters. This didn't make my top 5. It didn't make Rocky's top 5. I thought the art was a bit messy and didn't really do much for me. It felt a little bit derivative. The Green Lantern here is very much the reluctant hero. I didn't feel a connection with the character. It didn't feel exciting. It just didn't land for me. So ultimately, it didn't make my top 5. But we'll see where it goes from here. I mean, it could. I don't want to say it has nowhere to go but up, because it wasn't that bad. It's just when I looked at it and I looked at the other books, this wasn't really that close to making my top 5. So
I would
I don't
add,
know if you have anything to add, Rocky. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would add that of all the heroes, because this is an Elseworlds tale, but there were other heroes. It's from the Tangent universe. This is the Green Lantern from the Tangent universe. And if you don't know what that is, you guys can Google it, the DC Tangent universe. And of all the heroes, I thought this Green Lantern was one of the ones that I was least interested in. But I read this. This is an apocalyptic Earth. It's dark, it's gloomy, it's depressing. And the Green Lantern's character is dark, gloomy, depressing, ends up with a glorified sidekick. But frankly, I didn't really feel a great deal of hope reading this. I didn't feel like it did feel like it was a little bit tropey. I did read it. It just wasn't. It never quite worked for me. And Della Werther on the art, she does Something Is Killing the Children. She's really good at doing horror. But this wasn't horror. This wasn't horror based enough for me either. And so
it's a he, not a she.
He. Well, I apologize. I can never tell nowadays. But in any event, I thought it was okay. It was okay, but it didn't make my top 5.
Yeah, I didn't really care for the character design. You have this world that's basically plunged into darkness. And you have a character named Green Lantern that's literally carrying around a lantern, and yet still the detail. Like I couldn't, other than it's a hood and a cloak that's green. There wasn't really much to the character design. So yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Up next, another book that doesn't make the top 5 for either of us, but this one I gave a lot more consideration to. It's Harley Quinn number 44. It's written by Elliot Kalin, who I'm sure we'll have on the show to talk about this at some point. Mindy Lee is the artist, Triana Farrell on colors, Lucas Catoni on letters. The thing that I appreciated most about this was the fact that Elliot gets a little meta right at the beginning of the book with Harley talking about how she's sort of bounced around between villain and hero, and you don't know what to expect, and she's zany sometimes and not at others. And yeah, it definitely feels like he's trying to establish a status quo and make everything that's happened basically since Jimmy and Amanda started writing the character. She's really swung wildly from one thing to another. He even goes so far as to mention her role in the Suicide Dream Team book that Nicole Maines wrote. So I appreciated the efforts there. The art felt a little juvenile to me, and this idea of Harley creating her own destruction agency, kind of like the detective agency, but a destructive agency. I don't know exactly what that means yet. We'll have to wait and see. But at least I thought, okay, at least he's trying to do something different. He's acknowledging the inconsistencies in the character. He's trying to get Harley back to her roots. In a way, he's doing a lot of the things that worked for Jimmy and Amanda's run. Take her out of Gotham City, put her somewhere. Now he's not taking her out of Gotham City, but he's putting her in Throat Cutter Hill in Gotham City, which feels, separate. Not quite what Jimmy and Amanda did, taking her to Coney Island, but he's doing a lot of those same things to try to differentiate and make her kind of stand on her own, taking away the crutch of Poison Ivy. Like I get it. There's tons of fans that love that relationship between Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn, but it feels like he's trying to get her back to basics. So maybe this is going to work. I don't know. I didn't plan on talking about this book that much, but I know Harley has a lot of fans out there. So
Yeah, well, I will add that Harley Quinn will become popular again when they do an absolute Harley Quinn. Since we have an absolute Batman, we have a Joker who doesn't really laugh. And if we have a absolute Harley Quinn who's evil, then you'll see Harley Quinn return to greatness. That's my prediction. But this is the same old Harley Quinn with just a different writer on it, and not significantly different. And I just don't see this isn't a significant enough change for this character. It's still sort of by the numbers. And I mean, I feel very strongly that the Amanda Connor, Jimmy Palmiotti or iteration of that character has passed. It's past. It had it's a flash. It had its moment in the sun, but it's not what most fans want anymore. In my opinion, I might be wrong, but bring absolute Harley Quinn forward, make her evil, and watch the sales soar. And just that's my prediction. But unfortunately, we're not getting an absolute Harley Quinn in the foreseeable future. I don't think. Hopefully, Scott Snyder will prove me wrong in the pages of Absolute Batman.
I wouldn't expect Scott to do it. I mean, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if it's Jimmy and Amanda, but we'll see. I mean, she doesn't have to be villainous necessarily, but she does need to be more serious, I think. But I guess we'll have to wait and see. Okay, what's up next? John Constantine, Hellblazer, Dead in America at number 10. This didn't make my top 10. Or top 5 or Rocky's top 5 either. It's written by Si Spurriur, Aaron Campbell on art, handles the cover as well. Jordy Belair on colors, Steve Wands on letters. I got a chance to meet Aaron and talk to him for the first time at New York Comic Con. He was a real gentleman. He was awesome. I am a fan of this book, and I did consider putting this on there, but the reason I didn't is because it felt a little bit like setup, which makes sense being that we're getting toward the end of the series. And so it was a bit of a down issue in terms of excitement. So that's basically why it didn't land on my list. But I will say that Aaron's art is absolutely fantastic, and it does feel like the story is starting to coalesce. And I also feel like this is a story that's probably best read in a trade, just because of the way it presents so many interesting ideas that sort of are callbacks. And so reading it as a non-monthly, reading it in one or two sittings, it's probably going to make a lot more sense.
Okay, wasn't this the final issue? I thought it was only 10 issues.
I don't think so.
I
If
thought it was
so, that's a very strange ending.
Oh, it was
Almost
a very, very abrupt ending. But I thought this was the final issue. She even says, I guess that's a wrap on the final page.
I thought there was one more issue. Let me look real fast.
Yeah, because
Yeah, there's one. Yeah, there's one more. It runs 11 issues.
okay,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
I thought
yeah.
it is interesting what Si Spurriur is doing there with sort of creating like the sands of the Morpheus's sands of the sands of the Sandman have been sort of used for corrupt purposes, creating like a false narrative. But these sands of Morpheus that were lost in time since the 1960s sort of led to the current iteration of Hollywood and the corruption of Hollywood, and how it's sort of creating and the narrative of its own corrupt story, and how Constantine and the various players in this story get corrupted by it and become part of Hollywood. It is a really intricate tale, and Si Spurrier's done. It's very challenging to me as a reader to follow it, but it's worth the read, and it's going to read very well as a trade, like you said.
Yeah, I think intricate's a great way to put it. So yeah, but one more issue to go for that. So
Yeah. Okay.
okay. Up next, one of Rocky's top five, Nightwing number 119. This is Dan Waters' first issue on the character. It's called On with the Show, Part One. Curtain up. Dexter Soy is the artist. Veronica Gandini on colors. Wes Abbott on letters. I had Dan obviously had been on the show before, but I never had a chance to meet him in person. He was awesome to chat with. And yeah, look forward to having him on again more in the future. But give us your thoughts on Nightwing.
All right. I was curious because Dan Waters always seems. I just recall him. His writings on Batman always seem to be so almost esoteric and sort of out there and wild. And this is a much more grounded story that I'm used to reading from Dan Waters. And I love Dexter Soy's art, and I have to say, I really like. This is, where do you go after Tom Taylor's? Tom Taylor basically gave Nightwing a happy ending, Bloodhaven a happy ending, and Dan Waters, to his credit, sort of picks up where things left off, because at the end of Tom Taylor's run, there is, not surprisingly, there's sort of a power vacuum, because all the bad guys are basically they've been caught, and Nightwing's he's in the swing of things again. He got his leap back, so to speak, and here Dan Waters does a good job of focusing on the fact that there is this power vacuum, and we meet different. We see the sort of like the rogues gallery of new crime syndicates in Bloodhaven, and we got Mama Bear, Boss Bludgeon, Dr. Prozboskix, the Blockbuster Gang, and they basically want to chop Goth, or divide Bloodhaven up and create organized crime again, because organized crime isn't particularly organized. But somebody, Nightwing shows up to take them down, but before he can do so, they're all murdered. There's an explosion, and somebody has taken them off the playing board. Flash forward a couple days, and we meet our new players on the field. Dick Grayson, who is, of course, he's a philanthropist. He's got the Pennyworth Foundation worth billions of dollars that he uses to fund various things in Bloodhaven. And his half-sister, Melinda, is the mayor. And he ends up meeting this character by the name of Olivia Pierce, CEO of Spheric Solutions, who basically creates weapons to take out superheroes. And right away, likely Dan Waters is, playing these things. He's engaging in a lot of tropes that he normally didn't engage in the past, but I don't mind it. Clearly, we know, right? It seems fairly obvious that this Olivia is someone who's up to no good, and that to the surprise of no one, that's exactly what she is. She works for the Cirque du Sin, and she actually serves the Cirque du Sin seems to be this organization that appears to be mysterious, and they have their own sort of like his own mask, and it's almost like the Cirque du Sin. It's almost like the Court of Owls of Bloodhaven. That's what I'm getting. I'm getting a Court of Owls vibe here. This Cirque du Sin is sort of like the power behind what's really going on now. This new power grab by this new force, and I think it starts off good. And I'm curious to see where this goes. It very clearly this Olivia Pierce character is someone who is she's again, she's working for this new sort of secret society, maybe a little tropey, but again, I kind of like it, and we're getting hints that Melinda um, uh, is sort of a little bit insecure as a mayor. There's an election coming up, and she's willing uh, to militarize the police force of Bloodhaven and use spheric solutions and their military gadgets in order to do so. And that, of course, will cause all kinds of problems, but she's prepared to do that. And she's even sort of refusing the help of some aspects of the Pennyworth Foundation, which might create future tension between her and her brother Dick Grayson. So I thought it was pretty good. Where right away we hit the ground running. We got good setup. We got good continuity flowing from the end of Tom Taylor's run, and I thought it worked well. And Dexter Soy's art is really good. It's fantastic. It always is. He does a really good job with the action scenes, the kinetic energy, the acrobats of Dick Grayson of Nightwing. It really flows well. And yeah, there's a impressive. I thought this was a good start to the Nightwing series. You have any comments?
I don't. Dexter Soy's art is incredible. I agree with that. Sometimes he can use a looser style, which I don't enjoy as much. But this is more on kind of the tight style that he uses. And yeah, I thought the art was fantastic. And I particularly loved how when the story gets started, yeah, that page right there. If you're watching this on YouTube, everybody, with the kind of this clown character, clearly part of the Cirque du Sin, is lifting it up, saying let the show begin. It's like he's raising the curtain on the show. And then we see all those heads of the various gangs who are dividing up Bloodhaven, or think they're about to divide up Bloodhaven before they're blown up, negotiating, and it's fantastic. I really enjoyed this as well, right? Like we just talked about Detective Comics, how it was a complete departure from what Ron V did, which is perfectly fine. But I love how, in this case, Dan Waters is just picking up right where Tom Taylor left off in terms of what the situation, the state of Bloodhaven, and that power vacuum that you mentioned, but also that we get Melinda. And I like the back and forth between Dick and Melinda, brother and sister. They haven't known each other that long, but it feels very authentic. And I especially like, Dick, like he says, what's the line? He says, "You're militarizing the most corrupt police force in America." And she's like, "Well, it sounds bad when you put it like that." But
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, basically that's what she's doing. But again, she's doing the best that she can. I take her point. I don't know if it means she's insecure as much as she's doing what a politician has to do. She makes the point. She's like, I can't continue to help Bloodhaven if I lose the election. I got to do whatever I have to do to win. And then, probably in her mind, she's thinking, maybe I can put the genie back in the bottle if I have to. But clearly, this spheric solutions is up to no good. So we'll see how that all plays out.
Mm.
All right, next up, another book that's not on my top 5 or Rocky's top 5. It's Power Girl number 14. Continues to be written by Leah Williams, art by Adriana Mello, colors by Romulo Fajardo Jr. Letters by Becca Carey. This is continuing the story with Ejecta. Clearly, she's up to no good. We find out, this is a bit of a time jump from the last issue. We find out that Omen was basically traumatized by their encounter the last issue. And this is basically with the urging of Power Girl and Natasha Irons, Omen getting up off the mat, as you might say, and confronting Ejecta along with the help of Power Girl and Natasha Irons. But things don't go the way that they might hope that they would. And it's clear that there's some stronger force at work in a place called Delira. So how that might tie into things we've seen before with the lion and the Kryptonian entity and what have you remains to be seen. But ultimately, yeah, this didn't come close to making my top 5. It continues to be a little bit lacking in excitement, I guess is the way to put it. But the art's gorgeous. But yeah, it's not landing for me. At this point, I have to say, I don't think it's the fault of Leah Williams. I just think the editorial decisions to change her name to Paige and try to take her in a different direction than we've seen before, it's not the right decision in my mind for this character. I prefer the classic iteration. She barely showed up in Jeff Johns' JSA title, and yet I vastly preferred her there. that iteration than I do this one. So, anything to add, Rocky?
Uh, Not really. It's just this iteration's not for me. I really wanted more of a focus on. I just there's just nothing about this iteration of Power Girl that I'm really a big fan of. From her name to her chosen work to her supporting cast, it just none of it's interesting. It's just really boring, almost like quasi Sex in the City stuff. But it's just not for me. There's an audience for it out there, but I can see it being pretty much just a female audience. To be honest with you, it's just not my cup of tea. And this, but anyways, yeah, happy to I'm glad we're covering it so that people can at least know it's out there. It's not my cup of tea.
All right, let's move on. Up next, we have the aforementioned Superman number 19, written by Joshua Williamson, Dan Mora, now the artist, Alejandro Sanchez on colors, letters by Ariana Mayer. Oh boy, where to start? So Wonder Woman, Lois Lane has powers. She is Superwoman, and she's trying to juggle being the editor in chief um, of the Daily Planet, which is awesome. And the one person who doesn't know is, well, a lot of people don't know, but specifically Jimmy Olsen, who's close to her, probably closer to her than anyone but her son and her husband, doesn't know. And so now it's not just Clark sneaking off. And then, typically in the past, Lois was there to cover for him. Well, now Lois is sneaking off as well. And Jimmy's left like, what's going on? She's tasked him with getting a close up picture of Superwoman, find out who she is, what her deal is all about. This is certainly a jump in time forward. She's had the powers for a few weeks. She's being monitored by Supercorp, that used to be LexCorp, because they don't know if this is a finite amount of powers for her. Stay on that page for a second, Rocky. But they don't know if it's no, the page. Yeah, go forward one.
What?
No. Yeah, that's back.
Go forward.
Go forward. Yeah, right there. So hold on to that page for a second. But yeah, Supercore does not know if she's going to be able to recharge her, the power in her cells, because she appears to have powers very much like Superman. But Joshua Williamson did hint that these powers that she have are powers from somebody else, and it's going to be a surprise when we find out who those powers came from. But she's being monitored just to be on the safe side and what have you. They've had adventures. They've been going fighting alongside each other, Clark and Lois, as Superman and Superwoman. And you can tell they sort of enjoy it, as much as they're not real happy about the natural disaster or whatever, they do enjoy it. And they go and they fight or go and rescue some people from an explosion and an attack by the parasite in his zoo that he somehow his powers got changed. And when they finish that, they're on their way back to the Daily Planet when something horrific happens, and I'll talk about that in a second. But if you go back to that page, Rocky, what I want to point out, so that middle panel right there, the reporter with the glasses on, you see his shirt, how it's the symbol of from the world's finest,
Right.
Superman Batman mashup.
Yeah,
that's a self-portrait. That's Dan Mora. He drew himself into the book, and I saw it, and I was like, "Oh, that's awesome!" He drew himself into the book. That's fantastic. So his art is in this book is just absolutely amazing. It's incredible, and I love it, especially the first page where you see Clark and Lois flying out from the Daily Planet, heading over to tackle the parasite, is just incredible. So yeah, before that disaster takes place, the second disaster, we do get a little interlude where, like I mentioned previously, Lex Luthor is watching some footage of himself as his old megalomaniacal self, and Lena's trying to jog his memory, and like I mentioned, he's like, I don't remember being that guy, and I'm glad I don't. So that all leads into that Lex Luthor special that's coming, I think next year, from Joshua Williamson. So we'll see how that plays out. But when the next disaster strikes, as Lois and Superman are returning, we see this gigantic monster throwing cars around and attacking, and it's Doomsday, which is super interesting. And Clark's first instinct is, of course, to protect Lois. This is too dangerous for you. This is not your fight. Just evacuate everybody. I'll take on Doomsday. And of course, she's thinking, about the last time Superman fought Doomsday, which wasn't exactly the last time because they have fought since then. Maybe it's more accurate to say the first time. And there's a great recreation of that famous scene with Lois holding Superman in her arms by Dan Mora, which is gorgeous to look at. I especially love how it's sort of colored and textured differently. Um, but as they're about to attack, so Lois convinces Clark, like, no, I'm not running away. I'm fighting right alongside Doomsday with you. All of a sudden, everything freezes. There's not a sound. Nothing's moving. The whole world's gone quiet. Time has basically stopped. Um, and as Superman makes this realization, there's a figure that says, one might say time has been trapped. And we see that it's the time trapper. Um, and he's talking about the scene that we've just seen the book opens with Superman and him at the end of time being the only two that are left. Um, and Superman's trying to figure out, why are you here? Why are you in this time? Cut to the chase. And Time Trapper says, because this moment is special. Everything that happens next, he describes it as the horror. The horror that happens next will decide the fate of everything. And I've died many times before. I've always come back. And once it was even at your hands, because you knew me as Doomsday. And he pulls his hood back, and the Time Trapper is revealed as Doomsday himself. So when I saw this, it was one of those things where I thought, well, duh. So if you're not familiar with the Time Trapper, he's this entity who can manipulate time, and he exists all the way at the very end of time. But his identity has changed many times over the years, depending on who's writing the story. And it's this idea that depending on how history and the future and time and everything, existence, I guess we could say, depending on how it unfolds, depending on decisions people make and outcomes of certain things and what have you, that basically the last person that has sort of the power to manipulate time becomes the Time Trapper, right? So at various times it's been Mon-El, it's been one of those alien controllers, it's been a few other people, but the idea of it being Doomsday, like when I saw this, I was like, okay, first of all, that's awesome. It just makes so much sense. And second of all, great idea, Joshua Williamson, right? Like if you know the history of Doomsday, how every time he's killed, he's he's resurrected, and in whatever way he died, he evolves so that he can't be killed that same way again, right? So like say you stab him in the heart, stab him in the chest and stab him in the heart, and he dies. The next time when he's reborn, he may have like a giant organic plate over his chest so you can't stab him, or his heart will no longer be in his chest. Like his body evolves like super quickly. So it would make sense that if you go all the way to the end of time, what being is still alive because he's evolved to the point where he can't die? Well, Doomsday, of course. So Doomsday as a time trapper, man, this is awesome. And it especially because it makes so much sense and it's so logical, because when it was announced what was coming up next for Joshua Williamson's Superman run, because we've both really been enjoying it, it was like, okay, Time Trapper is part of it, but Doomsday. So wait, who's the big bad? Is Time Trapper manipulating Doomsday? Like what's going on? It doesn't really make sense to have two big bads. Well, now it makes perfect sense, right? That Doomsday is there and he is the Time Trapper. I absolutely loved it. You add in Dan Moore art. Man, I didn't think this title could get better, but you give Lois Lane the powers of Superman, or very similar powers, and put her in a costume and make her look super sexy with Dan Moore art, and have this villain that's sort of two villains in one, uh, and somehow it's even better than it was before. Like I love this. I love everything about it. I love the character work that's being done with Lex Luthor. Man, what a fantastic time to be a Superman fan,
Yeah.
especially considering this is coming out of the Bendis era. We went from Bendis, a little bit of Joshua Williamson, Philip Kennedy Johnson, and now just Joshua Williamson along with Mark Waid. I couldn't be happier. I was blown away. I was blown away by this issue. It was fantastic. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, between this and Absolute Superman, I couldn't be happier. I'm like a pig in slop, man. It's fantastic. So,
Yeah. And
what are your thoughts on it?
I I will echo all your sentiments. I really quite enjoyed this issue as well. I knew that I honestly I could have easily put this in my top five, but I knew you'd be talking about it, and I agree. It's just very, very well done. And Time Trapper, you mentioned it about Doomsday. Another thing about Doomsday, you said that of course he lives to the end of he's a natural candidate to be Time Trapper since he can live to the end of time. So can Superman. Superman can also, or arguably, he has different iterations where Superman has outlived all of humanity and outlived the universe. So Superman and Doomsday have that in common. And so how is that going to play into this? Because even Time Trapper, I / Doomsday even mentioned that to Superman. What happens when, have you told Lois yet that you're going to outlive everyone? That type of thing. So it's interesting. Where's Joshua Williamson going to go with this? At the end, the final page, how did Lois Lane get her powers? What sinister secret does the Time Trapper hold? When will strike a future of horrors, being referenced to the DC All-In special with Darkseid? And good luck beating Doomsday himself, who at this point, this iteration of Doomsday, we have the Time Trapper, but we also have the Doomsday who's trying to beat his way out of hell. So yeah, a lot of excitement, and I love the fact that Lois Lane is telling Jimmy Olsen to make sure you find a picture of Superwoman. I think that's kind of funny, but yeah, very well done, very well done.
Yeah, I mean, I'll make the argument. Like, so it's so interesting. I mean, when you think of like Superman's number one villain, I mean, everybody's going to think Lex Luthor, right? And so often villains are supposed to be sort of the other side of the coin of the hero. Like think about Batman. Batman's control and order, and the Joker is being out of control and insane and chaos. And that's how they're sort of opposite sides of each other. But I've said this a million times. If the Batman were real and the Joker were real, Batman would actually beat the Joker permanently in about 30 seconds, and then it's over because he's not like physically he's supposed to be strong or whatever, and Batman's like the pinnacle of whatever. So you could think of that with Superman, right? Like Superman is very powerful physically. He is mentally as well, but that wasn't stressed as much early on. And he's sort of the pinnacle, and Luthor sees himself as sort of an everyman, which is ridiculous considering the amount of money he has. But he's not, he is very much human, and that's how he's sort of the opposite. But you can almost make the argument that Doomsday should really be the number one, opposite of Superman because of the idea of compassion and not compassion. And the fact that, like you said, they will both, they're beings that will live to the end of time. So you can think of them as antagonists that will, outlive everything, but they're sort of opposing forces, one full of hope and one, the idea of despair and sort of embodying death that can never really claim them. So it's an interesting, contrast there. And the other thing, part of the reason I love Doomsday is like Doomsday was actually created in my lifetime, right? Like I could never actually afford a first appearance of Lex Luthor or the Joker for that matter, or Superman or Batman, but I certainly have multiple copies of the first appearance of Doomsday. So anyway, let's move on. Next up, we have The Flash, number 14, As Above. It's continuing to be written by Si Spurriur. The art is by Vasco Gregev, colors by Matt Herms, and lettered by Hassan Otsman Elhau. This is on your top 5, Rocky, so take it away.
Yeah, and I say top 5 is a little bit of perhaps a misnomer for this issue, although I will say that this is more enjoyable than any previous issue of Si Spurriur. This is what Si Spurriur should have started out with, because this is actually Si Spurriur understanding the assignment finally. That is, Flash is supposed to be a family comic, as opposed to the esoteric nonsense that we got for his first 12 issues, or his first 13 issues. This is actually the Wally West and Linda taking Jay and Irie, the kids, on vacation to Skataris, which is the home of the Warlord. And of course, but there's the added catch to it, which I think Si Spurriur did a good job of setting up, and that is that essentially Skataris is at the end of Absolute Power, all of the let me rephrase that. At the end of the last story arc with the Flash, all the Rogues Gallery were apprehended, except for the Weather Wizard, who we find out is somehow made his way to Skataris and has become some sort of master wizard at Skataris, and is wreaking havoc on the magic within Skataris. And and the Warlord has asked for Wally West's help through the Justice League, and basically Wally West is using that as an excuse to take the family on vacation, to take Linda and the kids on vacation to Skatars and try to kill two birds with one stone. Well, that sounds like a fun story. And while you're there, he's going to apprehend the Weather Wizard, and even Si Spurriur finally has Wally West even joke that he confides in Linda that this is what he wants to do. And Linda makes a joke of good, and don't ever think you're going to try to pull a fast one again. Don't keep secrets from me again. It's like, okay, finally. I mean, this could have happened immediately following Jeremy Adams' run. I like it. We even get a retirement party for Barry Allen, who no longer has his powers as the Flash. He sort of hands Barry hands Wally his Flash ring. And Wally West appropriately says, it's heavier than it looks, and because obviously it's also a metaphor. It's a great burden to carry. The Irie sort of steals the Justice League membership card, and it's a boom tube card. Wally refers to it as a boom tube card, and he warns Martian Manhunter at one point, saying, these cards have some imperfections to them. That they're still working out some wrinkles apparently, which I think is maybe a cause for concern. But Irie at the end of the issue ends up stealing the card, activating it, and ends up in the Justice League satellite. So she's being naughty there. Even the Pilgrim shows up, the future version of Waid West, and he sort of plants the idea into Wally's head that, hey, why not kill two birds with one stone, take the kids and the family on vacation to Skataris? And so clearly a future Waid West must have a recollection of what the adventure to Skataris might look like. And I thought it was very well done. I thought that this gone is the esoteric, flowery language that took me out of the story in the first 13 issues. This feels like this is a better written Flash issue. It's more down to earth. And I know most people, I think, have given up on Si Spurrier's Flash because 13 issues was a long time to wait. But for what it's worth, if you want to return more to a family setting, a little bit more of the humor, far more straightforward, easier to read, less pretentious, this is definitely a vast improvement on the previous two story arcs. So for that reason, it gets my recommendation. And Vasco Georgiev's art, I also enjoyed it much more because he's not trying to draw ridiculous concepts of cosmological beings in the middle of nowhere and cutting a knife through the fabric of infinity and all this other nonsense. And we get a new costume for Wally West, which has hallmarks of both Barry Allen's headdress and some black in it on the outer body. It looks kind of cool. So overall I thought this was a better issue, more enjoyable, and a little bit more back to the roots of what we know about and love about Wally West and family. So, you have any comments?
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it too. You're right. Wally West is a family man. This is definitely has a family feel. You didn't mention the hijinks that, or did I? And you missed it. Hijinks that Irie gets up to at the end. She steals Wally's Justice League card.
I mentioned it, yeah, but go ahead.
yeah. The card's like, no, you're not Wally. And she uses her powers to sort of imitate his, I guess, like aura in a way.
Yeah.
So it fools the card into thinking it's him, and boom tubes to the watchtower, and immediately alarms go off, intruder alert, which is all well and good, and teenage hijinks or preteen hijinks or whatever, and very much in keeping with the family feel. But when she gets there, just to throw something in there that's still off kilter, cosmological, time travel, weird, because he's Si Spurriur and he can't help himself. But this time I'm excited because it isn't I mean, we don't know why yet or how, but it feels like it can work in more of a traditional way. Wally's there, but wait, she just left Wally in Skataris with her mother and her brother, and how could it be that he's on the watch? How is he in two places at once? So how that's going to play out, my guess is maybe one of the Wallys is the Pilgrim in disguise. We haven't seen the Pilgrim manifest super speed that I know of. So yeah, I don't know how that works. Maybe they're switching places when each of them need, like when you need the powers for the Justice League, they'll swap. And you need the powers in Skataris, they'll swap. And that's why he's saying, hey, superpowers don't work here, because sometimes you could say, oh, my superpowers aren't working. Again, I'm purely like speculating, but it was a cool twist at the end to have Irie there, and she's like, "Dad, what are you doing here?" And he's
Yeah, it
like,
makes you
"What are
wonder if
you
the
doing
boom,
here?"
yeah, if the boom tube car just makes her travel back in time or something like that a little bit. Something like that. I suspect it's probably something like that, or because I noticed that too. But honestly, I wasn't sure if that was just a screw up or if Wally West went back, or yeah, I wasn't. You know, it was just one of those things. I thought, well, okay, well, it'll play out next issue, but yeah. Anyways, yeah. I noticed that, but then I didn't. I just sort of like let it go. But you make a good point. Maybe it is another twist that Si Spurriur is getting at.
Yeah, gotta be. He's not the kind to throw something in like that willy nilly. So I wouldn't be surprised if that ends up being like the main focus of the story. We'll have to see.
Yeah.
Okay, up next on my top five is Batman: The Brave and the Bold, number 18. There's several stories in here, but I really picked it for one in particular, um, and that's the first story. It's written by Christian Ward, who has been on the show before, but I got a chance to meet in person for the first time at New York Comic Con. It was fantastic to meet him, take a pictures, say hi. Uh, so he's the writer. Patrick Reynolds is the artist. He does a fantastic job. Now those two, um, along with I'm blanking on her last name right now, but Heather is her first name. She's the colorist on it. They do Bloodstained Teeth over at Image, which is an awesome series. I recommend that. This time, Patrick Reynolds is joined by Louis NCT on colors, and then Hassan Othman El handles the letters. Pet's Erection Part 2 is the second story. Zipporah Smith writes it. Mike Norton handles the art. John Kalis on colors. Josh Reed on letters. Reflections by Jeremy Adams. Laura Braga is the artist. Arif Prianto on colors. Becca Carey on letters. Swipe Left on Scams. Written, colored, and also handling the art is Marguerite Savage. Carlos M. Mangual on colors. And then Robin Season 1, Part 1. Or sorry, Robin Season Part 1. Brendan Hay is the writer. Marco Santucci on art. Luis Guerrero on colors. Carlos M. Mangual on letters. So, excuse me. Like I said, the reason that I chose this, um, in terms of putting on my top five, was because of the first story, which is called Doubt. So there's actually this character called Doubt, and for lack of a better way to put it, he's got like Jedi mind trick powers, right? So um, he tells people like, forget that you've seen me. He kind of whispers it, and they forget that they've seen him. And so what he's been doing is he's been sort of using these powers on older people and getting them to go to the bank and turn over the deeds to their house, or empty their bank account, um, and all that, and been getting rich. So Batman knows that he's coming, or is aware of his powers or what have you, and he approaches and he muzzles him, and he's with Batman, very strong will, what have you, but Doubt, he's no idiot, complete idiot anyway, and he's actually got a recording of himself, that he plays when he can't talk, that tells Bruce Wayne that he's not Batman. He plays it for Batman. Says, "I doubt you're Batman anymore," and Bruce sort of, so he passes out. Doubt gets away, um, and he goes back to the Batcave, and these doubts start setting in, and he ends up having this internal struggle, trying to figure out, is he actually Batman? And it's fantastic because the art style changes a little bit once he's in his own head, by Patrick Reynolds. So it really, really works well. And Batman does overcome those doubts. And the way that he does it is very poignant. And I love it. Like, Christian Ward has been doing more and more Batman work. He did Batman City of Madness. He's got a Two-Face series coming up that has already been announced. But he told me some stuff about it at New York Comic Con. There's a big twist at the end of the first issue. Can't wait for you guys to check it out. The way DC's been describing it is as Two-Face becomes like a Perry Mason for the Gotham underworld, but there's more to it than that. And so, yeah, I love that Christian Ward is playing more and more in the Batman area here. But the way Batman overcomes these doubts is he remembers back when his parents had been killed, and he was supposed to give a eulogy for them in front of all these people. I mean, here's this boy, he's gone through all this horrible trauma. Plus, he doesn't have a lot of life experience, and the whole idea of speaking in front of hundreds of people, because it's Martha and Thomas Wayne, but beloved in Gotham, and of course there's 1,000 people in the church, and how scared he was, and and basically Alfred, telling him not to have doubts. There's no bravery without fear, and just reassuring him, I'll always be there, I'll always believe in you, and helping him overcome his doubts. A young Bruce Wayne needing to do this thing, and that's how Bruce finds his way back to knowing that he's Batman, is remembering the strength of Alfred and the advice, and that Alfred will always be there and what have you. And so that allows Bruce to overcome and believe that he's Batman and sort of break the spell that the doubt has put on him. And he goes out and, of course, wins the day and captures Doubt, and Doubt sort of gets what he deserves. So it's a brilliant story. I mean, there have been a ton of stories about the relationship between Bruce and Alfred, and a lot of them are fantastic, and they're super emotional and they work. I would argue this one works as well as any of them, because it really gets at the core of what Alfred does for Bruce. It really allows him to believe in himself. The second story, which is the John Constantine, Streaky the Cat team up, it's a little behind the numbers. It's fine. The art is fine. Color work is probably the best thing about it. But ultimately, it's not really that memorable, so it's only okay. The Martian Manhunter, or sorry, the Miss Martian and Jackson Hyde story, I actually really, really enjoyed. I thought it was really fantastic. Great art, wonderful colors. This idea that there's a white Martian who he gets this sort of magical pearl, and he uses it to start stealing the water from Earth to revive Mars. He's going to bring Mars back to life. And basically, Jackson Hyde and Miss Martian are sort of invited by this white Martian to come and join him, and be kind of the rulers of this rebuilt Mars. And Jeremy Adams gets into the sort of temptations, if you will, that are behind that. So it works relatively well. And not characters that I would really associate Jeremy working on. I mean, Miss Martian hasn't been seen in a while. Jackson Hyde a little bit more, but certainly not recently. But I thought their voices felt authentic. It felt like them. So, which isn't a surprise. Jeremy generally does his homework when he's going to be writing things. The Marguerite Sauvage, it's a Harley Quinn story, a bit of a throwaway, nothing special. Thought the art was the best thing about it. But then the last one, the Brendan Hay story, is interesting and fun in terms of the interplay between Tim Drake and Damian. They really go back and forth and sort of bicker like brothers. And the Marco Santucci art is fantastic, and the colors are very bright and vibrant. It feels very much like a classic superhero story. So I did enjoy that one quite a bit as well. Again, I have brothers. I know how it is. And I should shout out Luis Guerrero on the colors. He does a fantastic job. So, yeah, I mean, if you pick this up, and I get it, not everybody wants to pick it up because maybe you don't enjoy every story and it is a higher price point and what have you. But man, I feel like every Batman fan should read that Doubt story from Christian Ward, because it's just fantastic. I mean, really, really good. All right.
Yeah.
Up next.
Yeah. I just want to say, I agree with your comments on Doubt. I mean, that's a fantastic new character. So much potential.
Wait, you like the story, or you like the character himself, or both?
I like the character himself. I think it's a fantastic character. So much potential. I mean, just really excellent character.
All right. Okay. Up next, we have. Is this on either of our lists? Oh yeah, it's on mine. It's Green Arrow number 17, which also happens to be Legacy number 350. Trial by Justice, Joshua Williamson, Amin K. Nahulapan, Romulo Fajardo Jr., and Troy Petrie. Obviously, writer, artist, colorist, letterer, like we always do. This is almost, we could call it an epilogue, I suppose, for Absolute Power. We talked a lot about it at the time, that we just couldn't believe that Oliver Queen would betray the Justice League, and all credit to Mark Waid. He never said anything that wasn't true. So, very clever. Mark Waid is a very smart man. But the fact that when, I put it to him when he was on the show, like, I I just don't see it. Oliver Queen has got to be, he's going to blackmail or double cross Amanda Waller at some point. And Mark Waid's response being, well, I don't know how somebody um, could fool Amanda Waller when she has these mind readers and people that can see the future and blah blah blah. Well, the way you do it is Oliver didn't know. There was nothing to read in his mind because he believed what he was doing was actually true, and there was like a post hypnotic suggestion, I guess you'd say, from Martian Manhunter, so that at a certain point Oliver would sort of realize what he was doing, and at that point he could betray Waller when it would do the most good. A brilliant way to have a little twist there at the end, and this lays it out. Joshua Williamson lays it all out. So if you didn't completely understand that in reading Absolute Power and how that could have gone down or what have you, it's sort of spoon fed to you here, but it doesn't feel like um, it's too expositional or you're being talked down to, because Williamson does it in such a way that he's conveying the thoughts and the reasoning and the emotion of Oliver Queen behind all these decisions that he made. So it lands with a lot more impact. Um, Now, if you're not a fan of Oliver Queen, I could see you being like, I'm not really buying it, or it feels a little bit, like Ex Deus Machina, or a little bit by the numbers. I could see that, but I've been reading Oliver Queen for a long time, and I feel like I understand the character, and this feels very much in character with him. And along with that, the reaction that the other heroes have feels pretty authentic as well, where Superman and Wonder Woman are more willing to forgive, Batman's a little more wary, and the Green Arrow family, for lack of a better term, is just sort of pissed, like they just can't believe that Oliver kept it from them. But he did it for their own good. First of all, he didn't want Amanda to get that information from their minds, thus endangering him or preventing him from having the opportunity to stop Amanda when it happened. And plus, Oliver probably knew they wouldn't have wanted him to go through with it because he was really taking a risk and putting himself in danger. So I thought it worked really, really well. There is a second story. It's called A Change of Scenery, written by Chris Condon, art by Montos, colors by Adriana Lucas, and letters by Hassan Otsman Elhau. And this is basically going to be the story of what's happening next. At the end of the first story, Oliver does mention kind of taking it back to the streets, for lack of a better term. So I don't, even though he's been accepted in the Justice League Unlimited, like a lot of characters have, I expect Green Arrow going forward to feel much more like Longbow Hunters, the classic Mike Grell era, because Oliver wants to get back to the streets where he feels like he can make more of a difference. And it starts off with what looks to be a serial killer who's out there trying to take out um, people who are corrupt. Looks like he poisons this businessman who was polluting water. He does it in what looks like making him drink poison water. He says, "Have a drink of fresh water," and the guy drinks it. And the next we see him, he's like dead, and he's like choking, like foam all over. He's choked to death. There's like foam, white foam on his mouth. His eyes are all red with all the blood vessels burst. So seems like it's going to be a little bit more of kind of a mystery feel, like I said, very much a street level character, getting back to that sort of Green Arrow type story. So I'm excited for that, to see where that goes. I think, as much as I like Green Arrow as sort of the everyman that adds context and sort of a normal person POV to the Justice League when he's out there with just a bow and an arrow and his wits, I think he works better as more of a street level character, going up against criminals and street criminals and corruption and the mob and that sort of thing, as opposed to like going up against a dark side. It just makes more sense for in my mind for him to work in that area. So we'll see how that plays out going forward. But we know this was Joshua Williamson's the first story in this issue was the last work of Joshua Williamson on the character. And while I feel like I think I can speak for both of us, we haven't really enjoyed everything he did on Green Arrow. He definitely ended on a high note with this sort of wrap up epilogue of Absolute Power, and I appreciated that we got those decisions and the thinking of Oliver Queen sort of fleshed out for us. I think it worked. So
Yeah, I'll just add that Chris Condon, I welcome him on the title. Because I like the street. I just like the more street centric Oliver Queen, and I'm really looking forward to see where the story goes. The way it ended. I wish that the entire issue was by Chris Condon. But I didn't. But I appreciate. I guess maybe we need a little bit of closure of the Williamson run coming out of Absolute Power, and maybe a little bit of clarity in terms of how Oliver Queen was processing that, and those scenes with the Justice League and Oliver Queen having those moments with the other members of the Arrow family, I think were important. So this was a good issue. It was a necessary issue and a good transition into a new creative team.
Yeah, and if you're like, well, why does that name sound familiar? He just got announced at New York Comic Con that he's doing Ultimate Wolverine, and he's done that Texas Blood in the past. I got a chance to meet him for the first time too, so at some point I'll probably get him on the show. And one other thing I wanted to mention. So before we were talking about that Doubt story, and I couldn't remember the last name. It's Heather Moore. Heather Moore is the one that did the colors for Bloodstained Teeth. I wanted to shout that out because she did a fantastic job on it. Okay, up next we have a book that's on Rocky's Top 5, Zatanna, Bring Down the House. This is the final issue. Issue number 5 is written by Marika Tamaki, drawn and colored by Javier Rodriguez, lettered by Hassan Otsman Elhel. Give us your thoughts.
Well, this is the final issue, book 5 of Zatanna, Bring Down the House. This is one where, quite frankly, this was I surprised myself by how much I enjoyed this series. I particularly love the art of Javier Rodriguez, and I was Marika Tamaki, the writer. I had some fun with this. The wrap up here is a little bit too convenient for me, but I really enjoy the art. I really like this new stranger, this sort of this new character called the Stranger, who works alongside Zatanna, and essentially this is we're sort of near the end of Zatanna trying to come to terms with the fact that she's very powerful with magic, but she doesn't really understand why. And ultimately, it's revealed here that she basically was the embodiment of magic, and her father Zatanna is revealed actually, unfortunately, to be kind of a villain. I got some mixed feelings about that. I always thought her father Zatanna was a good guy, but he's not. He's actually revealed to be ultimately the villain here. Or ultimately, he stole Zatanna's power. She was in many ways the embodiment of the magic, and he sort of stole it from her. And maybe his intentions were noble. He was trying to protect her, but ultimately the magic corrupted him. And ultimately Zatanna sort of reclaims her birthright by taking her magic back at this with the help of the Stranger. And there's a lot of like crazy scenes here, but the art is Javier Rodriguez does such a fantastic job on the art, and there from the beginning of the story where Zatanna is in the past she becomes a little girl again in her old house, and the Stranger is taller than her, and they're sort of exploring because they're sort of in the recesses of Zatanna's mind as she's trying to get to the bottom and confront her father, but she's got to magically conjure up her father from the depths of the magical realms of the psychological mental realm that they're in, and ultimately that happens. And one of the compliments, the reason why Javier Rodriguez I think does such a good job here is that it's when you work with magic artistically, the artistic license that artists have when they render magic. I mean, the sky's the limit. I mean, of course, the limit is the imagination of Javier Rodriguez. Zatanna's ability to impress us readers with her magic is frankly limited only by the creative genius of Javier Rodriguez and the way he sort of illustrates it, and he does just a really great job here. Now, some of the scenes that you really got to see you got to see it to truly appreciate it. But so many like really gorgeous colors here, and just as and there's a lot of even sort of comical scenes as Zatanna sort of conjures up all kinds of different things as she's trying to figure out how to utilize her magic until ultimately discovering that it's a lot easier than once she sort of relaxes and just literally, surprise, surprise, realizes that all she has to do is say what she means, but to say it backwards. I mean, It's tropey, it's Zatanna, but it's the Zatanna we know and love. Uh, Again, my criticism: this is, while this is interestingly enough, it's Black Label. I don't like the category, the suggestion that maybe her dad was a little bit more of the villain than maybe the I always thought him as being sort of a hero as well. So it sort of stains Zatara's legacy. Maybe that, but I guess that's it. It might arguably to some readers might make Zatanna more interesting with there being father dad daughter issues, that type of thing. Maybe it's because I'm a father to a daughter myself, and I got some biases. I would never do that to my daughter. I think she's magical. I wouldn't want to take away the magic that makes her, so bright. So I can't believe her father would do this. But again, it makes for a good story, though. Makes me a good. It got an emotional reaction out of me, and I really enjoyed it. And I thought there's one particular page where Zatanna it's so colorful. She finds her leg. She gets her magic back. I was going to say mojo back, but she gets her magic back. It's just beautifully rendered, and it's just very well done. And promises of more stories to come. I think we have this stranger. We have this new bunny character, and Zatanna now. This stranger now is maybe more in charge of the magic in the realm, and Zatanna is a very powerful musician and ends up ultimately at the end being rewarded by being given an invitation to join the Justice League by Wonder Woman and Batman. And I thought it worked really well, and it ends with Zatanna winking to the crowd, winking to the reader, and I thought it works, and I thought it was really well done, and I want to give a shout out to Marika Tamaki because I thought this was a well written series overall. It hit some emotional high notes. Some of my best scenes were some of the scenes that I enjoyed the most were in earlier issues with John Constantine showing up, and I also want to do it by way of an indirect apology because I'm going to be a little bit more harsh on Marika Tamaki when we review the backup in Action Comics with her Supergirl story. So, but in the meantime, what did you think of this?
I mean, she's got the Eisers to back up her storytelling skills, so I think she'll be fine.
Yeah,
Yeah, I feel similarly to you. Like ultimately, this is a very successful series. It sold very well.
yeah,
I mean, you make a good point about us, both being fathers to daughters, and yeah, I would never. So, and again, Zatara being like a legendary golden age hero, and this iteration, taking her power. Um, and I get, any idea that he was taking it to sort of protect her because then monsters and demons, or whatever, wouldn't come after her to to take her power. It seems like lip service to me because he becomes so power hungry once he has her power. So it doesn't like that. I don't buy into that. And it definitely, yeah, in this iteration, he is the villain without question, and I don't like that role for him. So I echo that sentiment. But ultimately, it is a successful story. It works really well as a coming of age story for Zatanna, and the Javier Rodriguez art and color work is done very, very well. Um, and reading, like, learning about Absolute Martian Manhunter from Dennis Camp with art by Javier Rodriguez this weekend, and then reading this on the plane ride home and seeing the art, I'm like, just gets even more excited to see his artwork on Absolute Martian Manhunter. So fantastic. Okay, up next we have I guess it's not an anthology because it only has 2 stories, but it's DC Horror Presents number 1 of 4. We have 2 stories here. The first is written by David Dastmalchian. He's the one that played the Polka Dot Man in Suicide Squad movie. Co-written by Leah Kilpatrick. Pencils and inks by Kat Staggs. Colors by Romulo Fajardo Jr. and lettering by Simon Bolin. And man, the pencils in that story are absolutely fantastic. And then we also have a Wonder Woman story as sort of I guess we'll call it a second co-feature. I guess that's the best way to put it. It's written by the Boulay brothers, pencils and inks by Butch Mappa, colors by Christian Rossi, and letters by Simon Bolin in that one as well. So this is on your list, Rocky. I suppose just in time for Halloween. Give us your thoughts.
Yeah. I wanted to give it a review because I was actually quite curious, and again, I'm probably going to be arguably the most critical on this, even though it was on my top 5. I wanted to review it because I was hoping this would be a little bit something different than what it actually ends up being. This is a 4-issue series, so I thought that the central conceit of this, what a wonderful opportunity to tell some horror stories that are actually in continuity, as opposed to ones that seem to be maybe a little bit over the top. And I got mixed feelings about it, to be honest. My first criticism I will give is that this amazing cover, this cover of an undead Superman, it looks amazing, but there's again, it's not reflective of the content. And that's a cardinal sin for me, and that's inexcusable. Because the first story is called Dollhouse, the Dollhouse in Love You to Pieces, and it's actually it's you mentioned the art is absolutely fantastic by Cat Stagg, in amazing art, and it's actually kind of a funny story because this character, this doll maker, she basically has a boyfriend who basically he commits suicide. He jumps off a building, and only there's some significant misdirection at the beginning of the stories, because you got Dollmaker walking into this apartment, and it looks as if her boyfriend's fallen off the balcony, and she goes to the main floor. The ambulance is already there taking his dead body away, because obviously he's got to be dead. He fell so many stories. She says, no, I can fix him, and she basically chases after the ambulance, manages to get into the ambulance, kills one of the paramedics, forces the other paramedic to take her boyfriend Max, to take his corpse to her father, and her father sort of resurrects Max by, her father's like a doctor, is almost like a Dr. Frankenstein, and sort of pieces him and sews him back up together again. Oh, and then when she resurrects Max, Max is all upset. No, why am I here? I was free. I was finally free. You discover the big revelation is that he did indeed kill himself. He tried to escape imagine being in a relationship that's so bad, the only way you can escape it is by killing yourself. That's what this guy was doing. That's what Max was doing. But you got a girlfriend like Dollmaker who wouldn't allow it. She resurrects him, and then she resurrects him only to smash his face in with a hammer. And as she does so, you look behind her and you see all the other, what I can only guess are maybe boyfriends in the background that she won't let escape from her dungeon. And I thought it was comical, and it did put a smile on my face. So kudos to writer David Dastmalchian and Leah Kilpatrick. I thought it was kind of I thought it was funny. I got a good laugh out of it. It had some creep show vibes, and pencil and inks by Cat Staggs, fantastic, and Romulo Fujita Jr. on the colors did a really good job of it. Do you have anything to comment on the first story before I talk about the Wonder Woman story? Sorry, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Just that I thought the art by Cat Staggs was really exciting, and it was pretty brutal. This is not a story for anybody with a weak stomach. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, no, for sure. Now, the Wonder Woman story, I thought was what's really odd about it is it's written by the Boulet brothers. I got to admit, I've never heard of them before. Have they written something? Are you aware of what else have they written? Do you know?
No, I'm not familiar with them at all.
Yeah, but I got to admit, I didn't. As a story itself, it's actually one that could in a different universe potentially have fit in continuity. We know that Hippolyta at one point in Trial of the Amazon sort of sacrificed herself and was hidden behind Doom's doorway, and that was the sacrifice she made. But we also know Hippolyta became a goddess, and in this issue, Circe, the villain Circe, resurrects the dead corpse of Hippolyta from behind Doom's doorway and escapes and attacks and kills a bunch of Amazons, and ultimately is defeated by Wonder Woman, and with the help of Donna Troy. And thank God Donna Troy was there, because Wonder Woman would not have been able to defeat her mother because she's so close to her mother. She couldn't bring herself to force her mother, even though her mother is evil now and undead, to be able to force her mother into Doom's doorway again. it doesn't really make a lot of sense given the continuity that we know, and for a number of reasons. But as a horror story, it works, and it is definitely something that Cersei would do. And I just want to give a comment here that, I will say that the Boulet brothers do understand that Cersei, or however you say her name, is a villain. And compare this to the Cersei of Absolute Wonder Woman, who becomes a loving mother to Wonder Woman. It's a very stark contrast. But I thought I was maybe less impressed with the story, but I like the Boulet brothers' attempt at, clearly they've read some Wonder Woman. They did a little bit, I think, of research, and I think they got the rapport between Donna Troy and Wonder Woman. I thought they nailed that and did a good job. And Pencils and Inks by Butch Mappa was pretty good, and Christian Rossi on the colors. I thought it was very well done. And so overall, I'm really curious to see where this DC horror takes. I think there's so much potential to have actual in continuity horror stories in the DC universe. And I don't know if that's what this series is. Maybe they're all out of continuity, but I really think there's a potential to have in-story ongoing horror stories in the DC universe, even if it is for the 4-issue series. And that's why I wanted to review this, and hoping that maybe we'll get a few gems of some really great horror stories that might lead to something more. But what do you think of the final story?
Yeah, I mean, it didn't really leave an impression on me. I'm not even sure I could, again, it's Cersei. I get it, witch and horror, whatever, but I don't know. It didn't land for me. I thought the first one was more scary. The second one was just a little paint by the numbers, not memorable at all. But the art was strong. I thought, and it was paced well. It just, I don't know, the Amazons as kind of characters for a horror story didn't work that well. So, all right. Anyway, you mentioned before Action Comics. That's where we're at, number 1072, as it continues its weekly run with the Phantom story. This is part 3, written by Mark Waid, Clayton Henry on the art, along with Michael Shelfer. Colors by Matt Herms, and letters by Dave Sharp. So Clayton is writing the majority of the story, but whenever we go, which is set in the Phantom Zone. Whenever we go back to Earth, that's when Michael Shelfer takes over. And there's a backup. We'll get to the credits on that in a little bit. But first, we'll let Rocky give us his thoughts on the main story.
Well, this continues the story of Superman being in the Phantom Zone. He's gone in the Phantom Zone because some of the 3 of the prisoners of the Phantom Zone they merged together in a horrific way, and sort of were shot out of this Phantom Zone projector in the Fortress of Solitude, and they basically wanted to be killed. They were in pain. They were deformed, and upon Superman and Supergirl dealing with that, Superman realized that something was up with the Phantom Zone. One of the things that the Phantom Zone has been in a state of flux for the last 5 years in DC continuity. It's been portrayed in different ways, and to the credit of Mark Waid, he's done a good job of acknowledging that and basically having Superman deal with it and creating the story around it, which is going to try to sort of make it all make sense. The Phantom Zone has been sort of wonky and crazy and all over the place, and this part 3 of the story called Phantoms has Superman. He's befriended by Monel, who ends up he thought he was the Phantom King, but Monel in fact defeated this Captain Zadu and imprisoned Captain Zadu on his sort of ship that's it's almost like a pirate ship floating through the recesses of the Phantom Zone, and we are told that Captain Zadu is the prisoner on the ship. And Monel has a crew that they respect Monel very much, and they do his bidding, and they respect him so much that they even tolerate the presence of Superman, who is the son of their jailer, of course, Jor-El. And it's we are told that essentially what has happened is that this person by the name of Aether. Aether was this person who discovered the Phantom Zone at some time in the past and wanted to try to reform all of the Phantom Zone criminals, or at least try to help them out because he felt sorry for them. And so he began to create material physical objects within the zone. But by doing so, by giving materiality and making the prisoners of the Phantom Zone like non-corporeal, essentially, or more corporeal rather, more physical, he also gave them, he forgot that they were sociopaths, and there's a reason why they were in the zone. And some of the prisoners began to kill each other, and essentially Aether became he became intolerant of their behavior, and he began to act like a warden, and he began to act like a tyrant, and to punish them, and to almost treat them like slaves, and to torture them, and to put them into servitude in the Phantom Zone. And he appointed this Captain Zadu as being essentially the warden of the zone, while even creating this mythical place, this Aethropolis, a place where he wants to accumulate all of the Phantom Zone prisoners. And it was Captain Zadu wanted to take all the Phantom Zone prisoners to Aethropolis, where Aether is. And ultimately, in traveling there, Monel and Superman end up discovering they go through various areas of the zone. And at one point, they go through an area of the Phantom Zone where they all become sort of transparent again and corporeal, and that allows Captain Zadu to escape. And Captain Zadu tells Aether, warns him about Superman being there, and Aether, they basically confirm that Zathar wants to destroy the Earth, and so he's clearly got eyes not only on controlling the Phantom Zone, but bringing his tyranny from the Phantom Zone, expanding it out, and to ultimately destroy the Earth. And yeah, it's just a really good story. I really like I love the weekly aspect of it. My pocketbook doesn't, to be blunt about it, but I can remember the story, and this is really firing on all cylinders, this story, and I can remember what's happening in the previous issue. There's always a lot at stake. I feel that I love Monel. I've loved Monel since the Legion of Superheroes, Superwoman Legion of Superheroes. The relationship, Mark Waid does a good job establishing the backstory between Monel and Superman. And this story has a lot of energy behind it, and it's enjoyable, and you can feel the stakes, and I quite enjoy it. Very much different than the backup, which the Supergirl backup, which I'll talk about after I get what's your point of view on the main Superman story?
Yeah, it's really interesting. We speculated like how I thought Monel was going to be the bad guy. We wondered how that was going to play out. Turns out not so, except maybe because there's hints, as you kind of alluded to, that he's like killed people, and it's a different take. And certainly Clayton, when I talked to him, gave some hints that everything is not as it seems. Obviously, Aether is sort of been touted, if you read solicitations, as the villain of the piece, but it's so much more than that. I really like the interaction between Monel and Superman, and Clayton mentioned to me, he was like, yeah, like, so I get the gig and I go online to read about Monel, and like, man, that's confusing. So he had to talk it out with Mark, which you get it, right? Like, there's so many different versions of the Legion of Superheroes. Which version of Monel are we talking about here? So how that's all going to play out, we'll have to wait and see. But the setup is just fantastic. What's going on back on Earth, and with Connor and John Kent, we have to get that figured out as well. But honestly, as classic as this story feels, and as interesting as it feels, and typical Mark Waid story, in that he wants to take something that doesn't make sense and make it make sense. Like, why has different versions of the Phantom Zone existed? Why are they sometimes ghosts? Why are they sometimes solid, and that kind of thing? And now we get like an in-story explanation for that. That's really interesting to me. But even more than that, even more than the classic feel of the story and the interaction between Superman and Monel, what I love most, my favorite thing about this Action Comics run, 3 issues in, is Clayton Henry's art. And I'm not just saying that because I got to hang out with the guy at New York Comic Con, but because the art is next level. This might be the best art I've seen Clayton do. He mentioned on the panel when he did the research for the giant spider creatures. It kind of creeped him out because he's going looking at close up pictures of spiders and what have you. But it's clear that he's given his all. He told me that basically action was kind of a bucket list, just like it was a bucket list for Mark Waid. This was a bucket list project for Clayton to do as well. So he's putting his everything into this art, into the visual storytelling. We talked about visual storytelling and transitions from panel to panel and that sort of thing. And he's given it his all. The art is absolutely fantastic. I just love it. I'm really excited to see what happens next. And this is a really good matchup of artist and artist on the correct story for them to really kind of lay it all out there. So I'm really enjoying it. As far as the backup's written by Marika Tamaki. Skylar Patridge handles the art. Colors are by Marisa Louise. Letters by Becca Carey. I sort of echo what I said last time, which is if the story drags on too long, the mystery of it, I'm going to start to lose interest. I'm just about at that point. Like, I still don't really understand what's going on because we haven't been told what's going on. And it's starting to feel a little boring, to be honest. The idea that whoever this villain is, whoever this prisoner is that Supergirl's supposed to be transporting, we still don't know who it is. But the idea that a judge had to be specifically created for the purpose of ruling on that case and passing judgment on this character, whoever they are, I do find that concept interesting. But that's like the tiniest little piece, one panel, one you could argue throwaway panel in this issue. So again, like nothing has happened yet to pull me into the story. I guess I'm going to keep reading it because the main story is so good. I'm just going to, continue, and at some point I am going to get answers. But yeah, I mentioned it, like I said last time, maybe even this first issue that we didn't have any answers, didn't know what's going on. We're 25% of the way through the story here. And I still have no idea what the hell's going on. I know Supergirl's out here, out in space, far away, no help because she's on a secret mission. But other than that, I don't know what the hell's going on. So to me, 25% of the way in, you need to tell us what's definitely third of the way in. Definitely by next issue, we need some answers. So anyway, what are your thoughts?
Well, it's interesting that Thanagar has been destroyed in the pages of Green Lantern. The planet has essentially been destroyed. That's a major thing. And here we have I wonder if this is. I doubt this is related to what's happened there. But this apparently the judge is related to the high court of Thanagar. We still don't know who the prisoner is. For a judge to be appointed. A judge had to be appointed especially for to judge this particular prisoner because there could be no connections to the prisoner. That really doesn't make any sense. In fact, it's really dumb. Almost. That's just silly, and it's frustrating. I'm not as kind as you are to this backup because there's no excuse for this level of like, frankly, it's extremely annoying. I find the art to be a little annoying too, quite frankly. I think that this is supposed to take place in space. I think that too much of it takes place in rooms where there's not particularly a high amount of there should be more creativity on the background. This takes place in space. Skylar Patridge is a better artist than this, in my mind. She's done some really amazing work. I know in the past, the most impressive I've seen her is when she drew the Amazon tribes of Banner McDowell in the backup to, I believe it was Wonder Woman. Was it a year ago or a couple of years ago? I thought that was really good. I don't know if she's just somebody else doing her inking or whatever the case. I haven't seen. Dare I say, I don't know if I've seen a lot of improvement in her work in the last few years. I'm disappointed in the art on this. This story here is going nowhere, and I'm not really sure. What's the reason for us not to be made privy as to what's going on? This is just really, it's very, very frustrating, especially when we have such a really good main story to have this backup that is going nowhere very, very fast. It's very, very frustrating. I don't even. but we're sort of trapped because the main story is so good. We're gonna discover what the ending of this backup is, no matter what. But it's pretty bad when I almost want to stop reading after I'm done reading the main story because But that's my frustration. It's Marika Tamaki did a good job with Zatanna, so thank you for that. Less so with this one.
And and again, is it just the fact that it's so vague and obtuse that you just
Yeah, I think that's what it is. And the thing is, I don't feel like there's a need for the vagueness. Like there's no narrative need. Like it's not building. It's annoying to me as a reader. I don't feel suspense. So I don't. I should be feeling. Oh, I can't wait to read next issue to find out what the secrets. No, actually, I'm just pissed off. Like there's no reason for us not to know at this point. It's just absolutely crazy. I
I
mean,
mean, we don't need to know. Yeah, we don't need to know everything because we want to
yeah,
read it and experience it. But we need to know something. Like I can't relate to the story.
yeah,
I have no in. I have no in. There's no hook because we know nothing. So,
yeah.
uh, anyway, the last book, everybody. It's on neither of our lists, but it is from the DC Vault. Death in the Family. Robin Lives, #4, from writer J.M. DeMatteis. Rick Leonardi is the artist. Rico Renzi on colors. Taylor Esposito on letters. It's interesting. It really deals a lot with the trauma that Jason Todd went through at the hands of the Joker, almost being killed. Obviously, it's a different take. It's a world where he lived. He ends up killing the Joker, which I find that to be completely realistic. And then somehow we're told he becomes the Joker at the end, which, again, I suppose you could see that happening. I really hope we don't get a sequel. I hope this doesn't continue. I hope there's not another, because we got the end of the Joker, which, as a non-Joker fan, I applaud that. I certainly don't want to see Jason Todd as the Joker. I Again, I think J.M. DeMatteis is a brilliant writer. I'm a huge fan of his. Um, I'd be curious to talk to him about, why, like what, I mean, I get it. Jason Todd was broken by, almost being killed by the Joker. And then everything that happened throughout this series. I just I don't know. It doesn't make sense in my mind that he would become the Joker. But, again, there must have been an audience for this because they put it out. But I actually have no idea how the sales were on it. I know basically that the Death in the Family, facsimile, or I guess it wasn't exactly a facsimile, but it was, the first of these Robin Lives. It was what had never been seen before. Like, what if the vote had gone the other way, and Jason Todd had lived? And that's what that issue was. And that issue sold really well. I guess people were curious enough to know, and that prompted them to put out this. But I don't know. Again, I haven't heard much talk about it, and I don't know the sales numbers. But I have a feeling that this didn't do anywhere near as well as that. I mean, it's fine. Hey, let me look at an issue I read back then that could have possibly been different. That's a huge difference than, okay, what comes next after, what would have come next after that. And it wouldn't have actually been this, right? Because it wouldn't have been J.M. DeMatteis writing it. It would have been somebody else.
Yeah.
But anyway, I didn't care for this. So
Yeah, I got nothing to add. It just wasn't. It's not my cup of tea. I'll just leave it at that.
yeah. All right. As far as collections that are coming out this week, everybody, we have a couple of them. Superman House of Brainiac trade paperback, which collects Action Comics 1064 through 1066, as well as Superman 13 through 15, and the Superman House of Brainiac special. That's the one written by Joshua Williamson, Rafa Sandoval on art, along with Miguel Mendoza. Basically the big Superman story that led into Absolute Power. We also have Batgirl Stephanie Brown, Volume 1, trade paperback, which collects a bunch of Batgirl Stephanie Brown stories, basically. They're not specifically called out here, so I can't tell you what they are. But there are 12 stories overall, and there's a variety of different writers on this. So we also have John Constantine Hellblazer by Jamie Delano, Omnibus Volume 1 hardcover. I think we talked about this last time, so maybe it didn't come out last week, and it's actually coming out this week. But it is 1,128 pages for $158 that basically collects John Constantine Hellblazer by Jamie Delano. It's when Constantine got his first solo ongoing series. Birds of Prey, Murder and Mystery trade paperback. This is the Gail Simone era of Birds of Prey, and it collects issues 56 through 67, 296 pages for $25. Elseworld Justice League is also out this week. This is the Volume 3 trade paperback, which collects a bunch of Elseworld's Justice League tables, again, from a variety of writers. 432 pages for $35. Adventures of Superman John Kent trade paperback, which collects the whole series from Tom Taylor. So that's issues 1 through 6. Green Lantern by Jeff Johns, book 3 trade paperback, which is 440 pages of Jeff Johns' Green Lantern work. From the main series 18 through 25, Green Lantern Corps 14 through 18, Green Lantern Sinestro Corps Special number 1, Tales of Sinestro Corps Superman Prime number 1, and Green Lantern Sinestro Corps Secret Files number 1. So if you're hankering for some classic Jeff Johns Green Lantern, you can pick that up this week. All right, I haven't even thought about my book of the week, Rocky. I guess I'll give it to Absolute Superman. Oh wait, that's not out yet. Let me take a quick look here. I think it's between two. That being Detective Comics, which was really fantastic, and I also have to give consideration to Superman 19, which was also amazing. Action Comics amazing as well, but that was on your list. So I think ultimately, out of those, I probably have to go with Superman 19, just barely edging out Detective Comics 1090. Because of my love of Superman, because of my love of Lois, really. And yeah, so I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I'm going to go with that's an excellent choice. I didn't like none of the 5 that I reviewed are good enough to be my pick of the week. I thought this was there was one where I'll be blunt. I wanted to be fair to you. You were very nice to me. You let me pick 5, but I intentionally did not pick all of 5. I wanted to be fair to you. I didn't think it was right for me to take the best comics. I just didn't feel right. I think Superman is the best title this week, hands down. I don't think anything comes close to it, straight up. So I'm going to go with the runner-up with that, and that is Detective Comics. And
there we go.
And I have to say, and maybe that's a cheat, but and I really wanted to be able to say that it would be Absolute Wonder Woman, and it was okay, but it was just too disappointing to me on a number of levels, where it didn't quite. I hope that in subsequent issues it fills in some significant gaps, and I think it will. I think Kelly Thompson's Birds of Prey took a couple issues to maybe find its footing. Maybe Absolute Wonder Woman would be the same way. So that's what I'm hoping. And Hayden Sherman's art was really good. But again, Detective Comics, Tom Taylor, man, he did it. It's a great story. But Superman 19, fantastic choice too.
Yeah, I agree. Both of these are definitely worthy. Interesting. We have a consensus on the top 2. Can't remember last time that happened. So
yeah.
Anyway, that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. Our Indie Spotlight will be out probably a day late. I don't think we're going to be able to get it out first thing in the morning Wednesday. It probably won't come out till either late Wednesday night or it'll be out by Thursday morning. Because honestly, I just haven't had a chance to read all of them yet because of travel. And, I basically lost my weekend reading time being at New York Comic Con, which I'm not complaining. Don't get me wrong. I had an absolutely fantastic time. So, and that New York Comic Con content should start coming out as well. I did some fantastic interviews there. I got some video footage of the show, and I'm just going to talk about kind of my experience as well that I had there at New York Comic Con, which I feel like it's one of those shows that everybody should do at least once. It's not a show that I'm going to be doing every year, partly because it's just so expensive to fly all the way to New York and get a hotel for 5 days and what have you. But I feel like it's a show I'll probably do like once every 2 or 3 years because it is a blast. So that's going to do it for this episode. We appreciate you joining us as always. Don't forget, if you want to listen to the audio-only feed of the Comic Source, over 2,000 past episodes on our audio feed. Just go to wherever you get your podcasts, whatever app or platform, do a search for the Comic Source and subscribe. You can check out all the other Comic Source content on our YouTube channel as well, if you prefer that. Being able to see the graphics and smiling faces and what have you, just do a search on YouTube for the Comic Source, like, subscribe, and make sure you ring that notification bell. Conversely, if you are listening on the audio feed and you want to see the books as we're talking about them, and you certainly will when we talk about Absolute Superman in a couple weeks, just go to Rocky's channel, Comic Space Boom exclamation point. Make sure you subscribe, ring the notification bell there as well. When you join us for these DC Spotlights every week, leave some comments below in the comment section. We'd love to hear what your favorite book of the week was, what worked for you, what didn't. We like to get some conversations going there. We really appreciate that. And you can also check out Rocky's previous content as well. So that's going to do it for this episode. As always, we appreciate you guys joining us and tuning in. Thank you so much for the support, and we will talk to you next time.
Catch you later.